40 Truths for Male Survivors of Childhood Sexual Abuse. This should be an interesting topic. Cecil, welcome to the program.
Well, thank you so much.
We need to warn people, what we're talking about here obviously is a very sensitive issue, and you may not want children listening because we're going to talk about some tough stuff here. Cecil Murphey is our guest. Excuse me if you're interrupting you.
No.
Go ahead.
Yeah, no, we do want parents to be aware of the subject matter. So, Cecil, this is a book. You've also had written another one, When a Man You Love Was Abused, a woman's guide to helping him overcome childhood sexual molestation. Let me ask you this first, Cecil. What are the statistics on the number of grown men walking around who have experienced molestation as a boy?
The official accepted statistics are 1 in 6, but here's the thing that people often don't realize is that men don't talk about it very readily, and more we're learning that a lot of men deny it, and I was one of them, until they hit their 40s and 50s, and then it kind of bumps out of them. So probably the reality is it's more like 1 in 3, which is what it is for females.
Wow, so 1 in 3 grown women experienced sexual abuse?
That's acceptable. That's an acceptable fact.
Wow.
What, do we got, a country of perverts?
That's staggering.
Well, I guess we do. Whether it's 1 in 3 or 1 in 20, it still means there are a lot of hurting people out there.
Or are these children
repeat offenders, maybe?
being molested by the same people?
Well, generally, the people who do the molesting are people that the children should ordinarily have been able to trust, which would mean people like a relative, ministers, pastors, scout leaders. These are not people who meet in the park somewhere or a dark road. These are people who are in their lives and should have been able to take care of them, and they should have been able to trust.
Yeah, but yes, sir. But what I'm getting at is, so you have 1 out of 3 children that are molested in this country, male or female, is what you're saying. And I'm saying that's being done by a lesser number of people than that. Obviously, you're talking about molesters may have many children that they have done this to. Well,
think of it this way. People don't, these guys, mostly men, and there are female abusers too who abuse boys. They're not just something they choose to do on the side. Think of it as an addiction. It's a compulsion. It's something that they just seem unable to fight. It's like being an alcoholic or any other kinds of addictions. Not everyone would agree with me on that, but I know this from talking to predators that it's a compulsion they just can't seem to get away from.
We're talking to Cecil Murphey, Murphey. He's written 2 best-selling books. One is called Not Quite Healed, which is 40 Truths for Male Survivors of Childhood Sexual Abuse. And the other one is When a Man You Love Was Abused, a woman's guide to helping him overcome childhood sexual molestation. I hate to have to talk about this, folks, but it's real. As Cecil just mentioned, the staggering number of us among this general population that have experienced this is just stunning. And your books are available to help people deal with this issue who've been victims or know somebody who's been a victim. Is that correct?
Oh, yes. Any Christian bookstore should carry them. Amazon, ChristianBooks.com. They're readily available.
And the publisher is
Kriegel.
Is Kriegel. Hey, I wasn't molested, but I was approached by a pedophile.
I was.
This
too.
is in the early 70s. You were too?
Well, an older young man.
Yeah, at the time when you were a child. Or
well,
what?
Yeah, I was probably in the 5th or 6th grade.
Yeah,
and this was a college.
That was same for
kid.
me.
Yeah,
same for me. And this guy was in his 20s.
And this guy wanted me to camp over And so, of course, I asked my parents, and my dad said, "What?" And
Right.
he said, "No." And so he said, "You cannot. No, you have nothing to do with this boy again." He explained to me that what the danger was, and I did see this guy who was a friend of mine, and I told him what my dad said. He said that there are sometimes older boys who like boys the way a boy would like a girl. And when I told this young, I distinctly remember this conversation. He said, this young man said, "Well, some of us are different," and and so he basically admitted that he was interested in me.
Mm-hmm.
And I thank the Lord,
Right.
obviously for my dad, who was wise enough, former Marine, he was wise enough to the ways of the world to say, no, this is not healthy for him to have an interest in a boy who's, 5 or 6 grades beneath him to hang out in. And so, but obviously, Cecil, there are a lot of young men who fall victim.
Of course. And, thank you for your story, because I think that's quite important. See, I'm not trying to make parents feel guilty, but here's what I've realized. This is my own story because I'm a survivor, and Gary Rowe, who helped write Not Quite Healed, is also a survivor. And here it is, that we are children who are needy. Every child needs to feel loved. Now, that doesn't mean parents don't love them, but it means they often don't feel loved or wanted. And in my case, I knew my parents did not love me. That's a given. But for most of us, we need that. We need that love. If we don't feel it from our parents, we are open and susceptible to outside forces, to anyone who shows us affection, attention. See, it's a natural craving. We all need to be loved.
Let me ask. I'm fixing to ask a question that is hard to ask, but I don't know how much you want to get into this, but you mentioned earlier about these pedophiles, or predators you call them, having a compulsive appetite for this.
That's correct.
And
you don't have to hesitate. I'm open to anything.
Okay, well, here's my question. I don't understand, and I know most people don't understand, how a adult could be sexually attracted in any way to a prepubescent person.
Child.
I mean, yeah. I don't. You understand what I'm saying?
I do, and I think, and here's the answer for that. It's a deep psychological thing, and I'm not a therapist, so let me just hit it from the surface. That is, that this is usually about the age in which they were victimized, and the tendency is to go back to the same period or era and attractiveness toward those who are about the same age or size. So that's a common occurrence. Got to remember, it's not that these people decide, well, I think I'll abuse kids. Remember, it's something they seem unable to stop. I'm not excusing them. I'm just simply saying, you ever met anybody who's addicted to drugs, alcohol? That takes precedence over everything else in their lives.
I know, but man, drugs give you a good feeling, and alcohol does the same. I understand that.
So
I understand that addiction. I've never been addicted to drugs or alcohol myself, but I can at least understand the physical high you get from that. But molesting children, I just don't understand what you get sexually or otherwise from that kind of, huh?
Well, for them, the abusers, and they're not just pedophiles, but the abusers are those who do get their high from it momentarily. There is that satisfaction. As in drugs, momentarily these folks feel well from their self-medication. It doesn't last. That's why they have to go out after it again.
Well, one of the things, and I hope you don't mind, Cecil, we're asking you questions. We're both trying to
help people.
Hey,
and these
I'm
books
totally
help people.
open.
Yeah,
Nothing to hide.
We're trying to wrap our minds around this. So here's part of the problem I have with the explanation that you give, and this is the common explanation. I understand that, but When I hear homosexuals, for example, and I've interviewed plenty of them for videos and for documentaries we've done, and by the way, I am not saying that all homosexuals abuse kids. I want to make sure that's clear. But I'm talking about the idea of sexual orientation. Because a lot of these gay men, especially that I've interviewed, they say, look, have always felt this way. I've always felt this attraction to the same gender. So I can't separate it from my personality. Now you are saying that, and the current state of the mental health field says the same thing, that pedophiles, we call them predators, abusers, they say the same thing. They say, I can't separate this desire, this attraction I have from my person. So I have a real problem, really, even with this whole idea of sexual orientation being something that is an uncontrollable impulse. And what I'm saying is, boy, I just struggle with that because it sounds like, not you, it sounds like they are making an excuse and they are normalizing their behavior. They're normalizing it because they're saying this comes from the core of who I am and I can't change it.
God made me this way.
God, and some of them would say, God made me this way, so what am I going to do? What do you say to the people who argue that?
Well, I would say, of course you're going to say something like that. Hey, nobody wants to say, hey, I'm a filthy
pervert,
dirty old man,
pedophile. Yeah. We tend to justify our behavior. And I think we have to be really careful that pedophiles and homosexuals are not the same.
Right.
Pedophiles generally will be attracted to males or females. So they're generally heterosexual in orientation, or so they claim. Homosexuals are quite different, and they're not necessarily the predators. They're usually the people who are attracted to those of their own age or size. That's a very, very general statement.
Right.
But yeah, it's so easy to justify that, and there may be some genetic basis for sexual orientation. That's beyond my scope. I just know this: there are an awful lot of men suffering today because they were abused as children, and nobody has been. Until recently, no one was talking about it.
Cecil, I want to spend the last 5 minutes talking about what kind of help you can offer for these folks who have been victims of molestation and the trauma that they've had to deal with throughout their lives because of it. Because we see Cecil Murphey is our guest, Murphey. He's written 2 books. His website is, what's your website?
Just my name, and even if you misspell Murphy without the E, it'll still get to me.
Okay.
What kind of help do you offer?
Well, I've done the 2 books. I also have a blog called menshatteringthesilence.blogspot.com, menshatteringthesilence.blogspot.com, in which we talk about these issues, and we're pretty frank about them. They could sign in, read it anonymously or use their name. We just want to help men who are in pain. What I'm trying to do is personally offer help to folks who contact me, but trying to raise an awareness. And it's starting to come. I think we're about where women were 30 years ago in talking about their sexual molestation as children.
Well, why do you think that men, you said the current numbers are 1 in 6, but you think it's probably more like 1 in 3. Why do men avoid talking about this? You said often until they're in their 40s or 50s. What's driving that?
By the way, that's a good question. I think that's a basic question. Here it is. Look, if I tell you that I've been molested, the fear is you're going to think I'm a homosexual, that I'm gay. Or there's the guilt, the shame. Somehow we think that we did something bad, where in reality something bad was done to us. We think we participated in. And, let's be very candid here. When somebody stimulates the sexual organs, it feels good. That's a physiological reality. But we're children. We don't understand that. And because it felt good, it means we think, oh, something wrong with me.
Right.